Something happened recently that should have moved you. Maybe it was a moment with someone you love. Something that, looking back, was genuinely good. A conversation, a quiet evening, a moment of real connection. The kind of thing you would describe to someone else as meaningful. And in the moment itself, you were there. You were present in the technical sense. You said the right things, maybe. You did what the situation called for. But something didn't quite land. There was a layer of glass between you and the experience.
Close enough to see it clearly. Not quite close enough to fully feel it. Or maybe it was something else. A piece of news that should have hit harder. A conversation that ended and you noticed, a beat later, that you weren't sure what you'd felt during it. Or a long stretch of time, weeks, months, where the days were fine, functional, nothing wrong, and also somehow flat.
Not depression in the dramatic sense, not crisis, just a quiet absence. The feeling of watching your own life from a slight distance, being in it without being quite all the way in it. If you know that distance, if what I'm describing sounds more familiar than you'd like to admit, I want to say something before we go any further. This is not a character flaw. It is not proof that you are cold or shallow or incapable of depth. It is the predictable result of something you were taught, something most men were taught early, before they had any capacity to evaluate whether the teaching was actually serving them. Today, we're going to examine that teaching honestly, not to dismantle who you are, not to suggest that what you've built, the steadiness, the reliability, the ability to stay calm when others don't, is without value, but to ask an honest question about what it cost and whether you still want to pay that price. There's an admission that most men have never made out loud, not even to themselves fully. It goes something like this: I don't really know what I feel. Not in a philosophical sense, in the immediate, practical sense. Something happens. An argument, a loss, a piece of good news, a quiet Tuesday evening. And if you were asked in that moment to name what you were actually feeling, the honest answer would often be, I'm not sure. There's something, but it's distant or vague, or it arrives and passes so quickly that you barely register it before you've already moved into problem-solving mode, or logical analysis mode, or simply getting on with things mode. For a lot of men, this is not a new development. It has been this way for a long time, long enough that it feels like a default, like the natural way of being, rather than something that was learned. That is exactly the point. The training that produced this was so early and so consistent and so rarely questioned that by adulthood it feels indistinguishable from personality. You think, this is just how I am. Some people are more emotional, some people are less. I'm one of the less. But it is not just how you are, it is what you were shaped to be. And the difference between those two things, between a nature and a training, matters enormously. Because a nature cannot be changed, but a training can be examined. And what can be examined can, with patience and honesty, be renegotiated. That is what this episode is about. Not turning you into someone unrecognizable. Not asking you to perform emotions you don't feel, or to become someone who processes everything out loud, or to trade your steadiness for something softer. Simply to look honestly at what you were told, and to decide, as the adult you now are, whether you still believe it. Nobody sat a young boy down and said, "Do not feel things. Feeling things is weak. If something hurts, pretend it doesn't. If you're afraid, perform confidence. If you're sad, perform competence." Nobody said it that directly, but most men received that message anyway, clearly enough that it shaped everything. It arrived in small moments. The time a boy cried and the adult in the room became uncomfortable. Not unkind, just visibly uneasy. And the boy learned, without words, that his emotion was a problem to be managed. The time a show of vulnerability was met with teasing from other boys. Not because they were cruel, but because they were also learning the same rules. The countless times that stoicism was modeled as the correct response to difficulty, by fathers, by coaches, by men in films and stories who were most admirable when they felt the least. It arrived in praise. He never complains. He's so tough. He just gets on with it. And in absence of praise, the quiet disapproval that accompanied tears or uncertainty, or the honest admission that something was hard. The message was consistent enough to become a belief. And the belief was this: emotions are things that happen to weaker people. A strong man processes through logic and moves forward. The goal is not to feel less. The goal is to be so solid that feeling doesn't interfere with function. There are things about this belief that are not entirely wrong. Emotional flooding, being overtaken by feeling in a way that disables action, is genuinely unhelpful. Learning to stay functional under pressure is a real skill, and it has real value. The man who cannot operate when things get difficult is not serving himself or anyone around him. But the belief didn't teach the difference between not being controlled by emotion and not having access to emotion at all. It collapsed those two things into one. And in doing so, it trained an entire generation of men not to govern their feelings, but to lose access to them entirely. That is the lie. Not that emotional control has value. It does. But that the way to achieve it is to stop feeling. It isn't. Here is what most of the men who received that training were never told. Emotions do not disappear because they are not acknowledged. They are not a fire that goes out if you stop feeding it. They are more like water. You can dam a river. You can redirect it. You can bury the channel so it runs underground and becomes invisible. But the water is still moving. Researchers in clinical psychology have a term for the difficulty identifying and describing one's own emotional states: alexithymia. It comes from Greek, literally no words for feelings. And it is, as the research consistently shows, significantly more common in men than in women. Not because men are biologically wired for emotional numbness, but because the training that produces it is significantly more common in male environments. Men with high levels of alexithymia cannot accurately name what they're feeling. They experience emotions as physical sensations: a tightness in the chest, a restlessness, an irritability that doesn't seem connected to anything specific, without being able to translate those sensations into emotional language. And the body, as it turns out, has been keeping track. The research on emotional suppression is now extensive and consistent. Unfelt, unacknowledged emotions do not simply disappear. They find alternative channels. The first is somatic, through the body. Chronic emotional suppression is associated with higher levels of physical tension, disrupted sleep, weakened immune response, and significantly elevated cardiovascular disease risk. The stress hormones that would be metabolized through emotional processing remain elevated instead. The body is carrying what the mind has refused to hold. The second channel is relational. The man who has lost access to his emotional life does not stop affecting the people around him emotionally. He becomes harder to reach. The connection stays at the surface, pleasant enough, functional enough, but without the depth that makes a relationship sustaining. His partner feels the distance even when nothing is technically wrong. His friendships plateau early. There is warmth without intimacy, company without real closeness. The third channel is psychological. Emotions that have been consistently suppressed do not stay small. They build. And when something, often something small and unexpected, finally breaches the wall, what comes through is disproportionate to what triggered it. A minor frustration produces an outsized reaction. A small disappointment lands as devastation. Or more commonly, nothing specific triggers it. And a man who has been fine for years finds himself moving through a low-grade depression that he cannot explain because he cannot identify the accumulated weight that produced it. The psychiatrist Bessel van der Kolk, in his landmark work on trauma in the body, made the case in language that cannot be improved. The body keeps the score. You can decide not to feel something consciously. The body's keeping count anyway. There is a version of Stoicism that is often used, consciously or not, to justify the very pattern we're examining. It goes something like this. The Stoics were men who felt nothing and were thereby unbreakable. Emotional detachment was their method, indifference their goal. The truly strong man, in this reading, is the one who processes everything through pure reason and is moved by nothing. This is one of the most common and most damaging misreadings in the history of philosophy. And the historical record corrects it directly. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the world, lost multiple children during his lifetime. In the Meditations, his private journals, he does not perform equanimity about these losses. He writes about grief. Real, present, human grief. He does not pretend the losses don't sting. He processes them, honestly, on the page, alone. Seneca, who wrote more extensively about the management of emotion than almost any other ancient writer, wrote letters of consolation that are among the most tender acknowledgments of human suffering in the ancient world. He did not tell grieving people to simply stop feeling. He acknowledged the grief as real, the loss as real, the pain as real. And then he offered philosophy not as a replacement for feeling, but as a companion to it. The Stoic project was never the elimination of emotion. It was the cultivation of a specific relationship with emotion. A relationship in which the man is not at the mercy of his feelings, not swept away, not controlled, not made irrational by them, but in which he retains the capacity to feel and then to choose. That is a completely different project from not feeling. And here is the part that most people who invoke Stoicism as justification for numbness miss. You cannot choose your response to something you cannot feel. You cannot govern a feeling you have no access to. You cannot practice the Stoic discipline of responding rather than reacting if the reaction has simply been buried beneath a surface of trained flatness. The Stoic ideal was not a man without emotion. It was a man who knew what he was feeling, clearly and honestly, and who retained the capacity to decide what to do with that information. That requires access. And access requires something most men were never taught to develop. Let me describe a man you may recognize. He is, by most external measures, a man who has things together. He works hard. He follows through. In a crisis, he is the person other people call because they know he will be steady. He doesn't catastrophize, he doesn't fall apart. His relationship is, by most measures, fine. His partner doesn't have obvious complaints. There is no conflict, no drama. He shows up, he provides, he is dependable. But she has said something to him, more than once, that he cannot quite figure out what to do with.
I feel like I can't reach you.
He doesn't know what she means. He's there. He's present. He listens when she talks. He helps when she needs help. But there is a specific kind of contact she is asking for that he doesn't know how to provide because he doesn't have access to the part of himself that would make that contact possible. He doesn't know, in the moment of a difficult conversation, what he is feeling. He knows what he thinks about it. He can analyze the situation with precision. But the feeling, the actual present human feeling, arrives muted, if it arrives at all. There are moments that should move him. His child doing something remarkable. A piece of music that used to mean something. A conversation with an old friend that goes somewhere unexpectedly real. And there's something there, a faint signal, like a radio station picked up from too far away, but it doesn't quite land with the full weight it seems like it should carry. He has learned to perform the appropriate response in these moments. A smile at the right time, the right words, the correct expression of gratitude or warmth or love. But inside, behind the performance, he is not entirely sure he is actually experiencing what he is displaying.
He has not talked about this. Not to his partner, not to his friends, not to anyone. Partly because he doesn't have the language for it, and partly because admitting it would mean admitting something about himself that his identity has been built around not admitting. That he is, under the reliability and the steadiness and the competence, very much alone inside himself. That the thing he was praised for, the not feeling, the solidity, the getting on with it, has extracted a cost he is only now beginning to calculate.
I want to be careful here, because there's a version of this conversation that goes somewhere unhelpful. The version that implies the solution is to become someone else, to swap the steadiness for expressiveness, to turn the dial from reserved to demonstrative and live there instead. That's not what this is. Emotional access does not mean emotional flooding.
It does not mean narrating every feeling as it arrives, or making your inner life the default topic of every conversation, or treating emotional expression as a measure of authenticity. What it means in practical terms is much simpler. It means knowing what you're feeling, not performing it, not broadcasting it, simply having access to it, in the same way you have access to what you're thinking. A man with genuine emotional access can sit with a difficult conversation and know, in real time, not 3 days later, that something in it landed as hurt. Not just as an intellectual awareness that the exchange was negative, as the actual felt experience of being hurt. He can be with someone he loves and feel the care as a present experience, not as a conclusion he's reached from evidence. He can notice when something has moved him, when a piece of music or a sunset or a moment with his child has produced something that wants to be felt, and stay with it long enough to feel it. None of this requires words. None of it requires an audience. It is an interior capacity, the ability to be present in your own emotional life, the way you are present in your own physical body. Most men had this as children. Children are naturally emotionally present. The capacity was not absent. It was trained out. And what was trained out can, with patience and practice, be trained back. Not quickly, not through a single decision, through the slow, consistent work of noticing, of asking the honest question and staying with it long enough to get an honest answer. That work changes things, quietly, gradually, and then noticeably. The relationship that felt slightly out of reach begins to feel closer. Not because anything external changed, because the man inside it is now more present, more reachable, more actually there. The moments that should matter begin to matter. Not because they've become more dramatic, but because there is someone home to receive them.
The practical application for this episode is not a practice in the usual sense. It is a question. One question, asked honestly as many times as you're willing to ask it. What am I actually feeling right now? Not what do I think about this situation? Not what is the rational response here? Not what should I be feeling? What am I actually feeling right now? In my body, in the room I'm in this moment. Sit with it. Don't rush toward an answer. The first response that arrives is often a thought masquerading as a feeling. I feel like this is unfair, or I feel like she's being unreasonable. Those are thoughts. They have feel like in front of them, but they're analyses. A feeling is simpler and more direct. Sad, afraid, angry, relieved, lonely, proud, hurt, warm. If you can't find a word, that's fine. Notice the physical sensation instead. Where in your body is there something? What does it feel like? Tight? Heavy? Open? Contracted? You are not trying to fix it. You are not trying to decide what to do with it. You are simply trying to know that it exists. This sounds deceptively simple. For men who have been practicing suppression for 20 or 30 years, it is not simple. The gap between the feeling and the awareness of it is wide. The question often arrives and finds nothing, or finds something so muted it barely registers. That is not failure. That is exactly the starting point. Ask the question anyway. In quiet moments, after a conversation that had some charge to it, before you fall asleep, during a walk, not as a therapeutic exercise, just as a genuine question, asked by the part of you that is beginning to be curious about what's actually going on inside. Over time, not weeks, but months, the access begins to recover, like a muscle that hasn't been used. It responds to being asked to work. Marcus Aurelius spent his evenings in exactly this kind of self-examination. Not navel-gazing, not performed introspection. A genuine, honest, regular turning of attention inward is not softness. It is the most demanding kind of discipline, and it produces the only thing that makes genuine emotional mastery possible: knowledge of yourself. Let's come back to where we started. The moment that should have landed and didn't quite. The layer of glass between you and the experience. The life that is, by all external measures, fine, and that somehow doesn't reach you all the way. I want to name what that distance actually is. It is the accumulated cost of a belief you accepted before you were old enough to question it. The belief that solidity meant absence, that strength meant not feeling, that the way to be unshakable was to make yourself unreachable, even to yourself. You accepted it because the world you were in rewarded you for it, and because it worked in certain ways. It kept you functional. It kept things manageable. It made you the person other people relied on. But it exacted a price that you were never told about. And I think, if you've stayed with this for the past 30 plus minutes, that you are beginning to feel, or at least sense, what that price has been. The Stoics understood something important. Seneca wrote that we cannot expect genuine peace from the absence of feeling, only from the understanding of it. Marcus Aurelius did not achieve his legendary composure by eliminating his inner life. He achieved it by examining his inner life, daily, honestly, without flinching. The examined man is not a softer man. He's a more complete one. He has access to the full range of his own experience. He can be moved without being swept away. He can feel without being controlled by feeling. He can be present, fully, actually present in the moments that make up his life. That is not the man without emotion. That is the calm man. And the path to him does not run through feeling less. It runs through finally allowing yourself to feel what's actually there. Here's what I want to leave you with. The lie was not that emotions are dangerous. Some emotions, in some moments, require management. That part is true. The lie was that not feeling them made you stronger. It didn't. It just made the feelings invisible to you. They didn't go anywhere. They've been shaping your behavior, your body, your relationships, and your inner life from a place you haven't been looking. The man who feels nothing controls nothing. Because control requires awareness, and awareness requires access. You don't have to become someone unrecognizable. You don't have to perform what you haven't yet recovered. You just have to start asking the question, what am I actually feeling right now? Ask it today. Ask it tomorrow. Ask it in the quiet moments when no one is watching and nothing is required of you. And stay with what you find. Not to fix it, not to share it, just to know it. That knowing is the beginning of everything else. I'll see you in the next one.